A new Lightning Elemental Runeblade has hit the commoner format, and let me tell you, I think she's probably one of the best poised Runeblades for the format out of these new heroes. Let's go ahead and take a look today at Aurora in the commoner format and see what this arcane ninja is essentially all about. Welcome in, Dragonfolk. It's such a pleasure to have you all here today for another commoner deck video for these wonderful heroes of Rosetta. Today we are covering Aurora, the elemental runeblade with the essence of lightning. So one half of Briar that we've been dealing with essentially here. We did make one for Florian. If you want to go ahead and check that out, I'll have that that link pop up on the screen somewhere here. So go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. But at least Aurora here, this has probably been one of my most fun decks to play when it comes to the new heroes out of Rosetta, simply because she's straightforward, she knows what she does, and she plays a lot of 0-for-4s with Go Again. And that's just like chef's kiss, right? That's all you can ask for in a format that you are limited to at least have the ability to provide a consistent amount of damage to where you're not really going to feel hurt in that regard. You know, you're not lacking for anything in this format. So with Aurora, our whole concept here is just to kind of do that same thing that you would see in FaB or Benji or anything of the sort, and it's just a go wide ninja deck with breakpoints. That's the main concept here. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the hero herself and see what she does. So it's pretty quick here. Once per turn instant, you can pay 2 resources to create an embodiment of lightning token, but you can only activate the ability if you have played a lightning card this turn. So once you play a lightning card at any point, you can pay 2 resources to make an embodiment of lightning token. If you don't know what embodiment of lightning token does, it says when you play an attack action card, you destroy this and the next attack gets Go Again, or the attack more specifically gets Go Again. So in this instance, if you had made an embodiment of lightning token and then you proceeded to play Crackling, Crackling does not initially have Go Again, but it would get Go Again and refresh that action point for you. So the concept here is just to play 3 to 4 cards, one of those cards probably being your weapon, and just kind of swinging until your opponent runs out of proper blocking material. And then you can even swing in with a little bit of arcane damage here with some of the Runeblade stuff. So let's just take a quick look at our equipment here. First, we're going to look at Flash of Brilliance. Flash of Brilliance says when this defends, you may discard a lightning card, and if you do, return an aura you control to its owner's hand. Now, the only aura we have here is Arcane Cussing and Sigil of Lightning. And both of those, when they leave the battlefield, you get effects. So that is important to note, that if you have any of these on the field and your opponent comes in and blocks, the only thing is that if you're blocking with this and you get the effect, Arcane Cussing will not trigger because it is not your turn. So you really want to utilize this card on Sigil of Lightning. But if you don't get to utilize it at all, it's still a block 1. It's just a Blade Break 1. You don't have to use its ability. You can just Blade Break 1 and it's chill, right? It's a much prettier Iron Rod helmet. Let's just put it that way. The next one we are playing is Aether Ironweave. Now, in order for you to activate Aether Ironweave's ability, you need to play a non-attack and an attack action, which in some cases you are in fact doing. But do remember that instants are not non-attack actions. So if you are playing a bunch of attack actions and then you have played instants as well, those are not non-attack actions, they are instants. So you're not able to utilize Aether Ironweave's ability here. But in some cases, whenever you're buffing cards and then coming in for attacks, you'll have the ability to pop Aether Ironweave for those motions. Will you ever? Probably not. The main reason you're running this is because of the block 1 here. Again, this is Battle Worn 1, and then maybe sometimes you'll be able to get 2 resources, but that is entirely based on, you know, the motion of the game. Next, we are going to play Mark of Lightning. Now, we have Mark of Lightning and Aether Crackers. Now, Mark of Lightning, I think, is the better one because Mark of Lightning says whenever a lightning or elemental attack you control is defended by a card from hand, you may destroy Mark of Lightning, and if you do, the attack deals 1 damage to the defending hero. What this means is that a card inside your deck, Second Strike, is actually very effective because you can play Second Strike, and when it attacks, if you've dealt damage this turn, it gets +1 and go again. But you have to have dealt damage. Now, in this situation, you can play Second Strike as the beginning part of your chain, and then if your opponent does in fact block with a card from hand, you can activate Mark of Lightning, deal 1 damage, and then it will gain that +1 and go again in the resolution step there. But if you want to try giving something that has a 1 or 0 cost go again anyway, you can play Snapdragon Scalers, right? So Snapdragon Scalers is the easiest thing to pick up, right? This is just a, hey, I want that card with 1 or 0 cost to get go again. Activate this in the attack reaction step, you give it go again. And then your weapon finally is Starfall. Again, we are not in a situation where we're going to be doing a lot of non-attack and then attack. We're mainly just playing attacks. So Starfall here allows us to add an additional attack into that chain. It also counts as a lightning weapon, so that's very important for some of the cards we'll talk about later. But let's get into the deck itself. It's pretty straightforward. It looks very, very simplistic to something like a Lightning Briar would or something of the sort. But let's go ahead and take a first look. The Runeblade cards I always end up adding in here is Arcane Cussing and Deadwood Dirge. That's just because with Arcane Cussing, you get to destroy this with Deadwood, and then you get to make 6 Runechant tokens. So if you happen to get these both in your hand and you're able to play both of them, it's very, very effective. But even still, playing Arcane Cussing and then coming in with a barrage of lightning attacks, your opponent is going to want to block those, because if they don't, then Arcane Cussing will be destroyed, and then you will gain 3 Runechants. So kind of puts your opponent in a weird position, and you're kind of forcing them to do things with their hand that they might normally not want to. So Arcane Cussing and Deadwood Dirge, only the reds. We just love to see them there. We have Crackling. Crackling here is one of the cards from the First Strike decks, and it's just a 0 cost, 3 attack, 3 block elemental Runeblade attack action that says Lightning Flow. If you played a lightning card this turn, it gets +1. So again, it's a 0 for 4. Whether or not you end your turn with this, it'll probably be for 4 damage, or if you have the ability to give it go again by playing Snapdragon Scalers or something of the sort, maybe you made an embodiment of lightning token with Aurora, then you can give her go again, or give this card go again. So 0 for 4 go again, that is the level in which we are saying. And I do want to preface, right, when I mean something like 0 for 4 go again, if you're brand new to the game and you don't know what I mean when I say that, this is the cost of the card. It is 0. 4 is the attack power of the card, and go again is an ability that we can give it to refresh our action point to play another card. So 0 for 4 go agains are really, really powerful in these young hero formats because it's providing a lot of pressure. So Crackling's very good there. I'm also running Electrify, just the reds, because if we happen to get this into our arsenal, awesome, right? It's another non-attack action that we can play, and then we get to draw a card if it's played from arsenal, and then the next time an attack action hits, it deals 3 additional damage. So again, almost like a boom grenade level kind of effect with Electrify. And so that's really, again, forcing your opponents to want to block your cards, because if they don't, they might take an additional 3 damage that they really weren't expecting. Electrostatic Discharge, this is a lightning instant card. You can play this whenever if you're asked to play an instant card to do something with another card, you can play this while that card's on the chain link, and you'll get the effect of that card, and then also set up for your next card you play with Electrostatic Discharge. So the next attack action you play this turn will cost 1 or less, gets +3. Very good. It costs 0. This is just Lightning Press, but for your next card. Then we move into Entwined Lightning. Entwined Lightning is a Lightning Fusion card. So luckily it costs 0 though. So you can play Entwined Lightning, and then if you have a lightning card in your hand, you don't need to pitch or anything. You just fuse it, so you'll show it to your opponent, and then this will get go again. So again, that's at 0 for 4 go again. They have a little bit of an idea of what is coming up next, but you can also pitch that same card to activate your Starfall to come in with another attack there and kind of keep them on the back foot. Glittering Charge Red. 0 for 4 with conditional go again. Now, in order for this one to get go again, you need to have played an instant card, this Chain Link. So whether that be Sigil of Lightning or Electrostatic Discharge, or shoot, maybe you're just looking for something to Snapdragon Scalers, you can utilize that on Flittering Charge to add that additional effect there. Fry, 0 for 3. It's a lightning attack action, so all these lightning attacks end up activating Aurora's ability and making it online, so that way she can pitch 2 at any point to give go again to her next attack whenever she creates an Embodiment of Lightning token. Then we've hit the high notes. Now, if we do make an Embodiment of Lightning token, and we do that in the resolution step, this actually will be able to go ahead and not be popping the Embodiment of Lightning token, and you get the effect of giving it +2 here. So very, very good stuff there to be able to make an additional aura at any point. And then, of course, you do also have things like Deadwood Dirge and Arcane Cussing. This is kind of how you'd make other things there too. But even a 1 for 4 block 3 is still good rate for this deck. So we like to see that there. Then we have Lightning Surges. These are the reds and the yellows. And these are just, if they're in the arsenal and then you play them, they get go again. So you're going to want to put Lightning Surges and Electrifies in the arsenal if you can help it, because they will get you additional value when they are played from the arsenal. Photon Rush, another card that came out of the First Strike decks, just says a 0 for 3 Lightning Flow. If you played a lightning card this turn, it gets go again. So 0 for 3 go again. It's not as good as a 0 for 4 go again, but the fact that it blocks for 3 is still enough for me to value putting it in here. Scar for a Scar, more conditional go again. If you have less life than your opponent, than the opposing hero, this will get go again. And in most cases, this might be the case for you because you're not going to really want to block a whole lot in this deck. Obviously, block to save your life, but in a sense where if your opponent's at 13 life and you're at 12 life, this gets a ton of value because you can start this off as a 0 for 4 go again and just kind of keep throwing those breakpoint pressures. Second Strike, again, we spoke about. This is, again, a conditional go again card where if you dealt damage, then it gets +1 and go again. So any damage, whether it be arcane or physical or just like a piece of damage from things like Mark of Lightning, then Second Strike will get +1 and go again. The blocking potential in Commoner is also fairly limited. So even if you're able to leak 1 damage through on an Entwined Lightning or on a Lightning Surge or on a Scar for a Scar, Second Strike gets to do a lot of awesome stuff, so keep that in mind. We are also then running Shrill of Skullform. Now, Shrill of Skullform, this also plays a lot like Hit the High Notes, in which it's just a, you pay 2 here. If you created an aura this turn, it gets an additional value. So you can end your turn on something like a Shrill of Skullform, right? You can save some resources. You can go ahead and then attack with a lightning card, and then with a blue and a red, you can pitch both of those. You can have Shrill of Skullform come in, and then during the resolution step, you can activate Aurora's ability to then create that embodiment token, therefore pumping this back up to 7 damage, which is significantly better. These might see changes because 2-cost cards in a 0 and 1-cost card deck are just a little too much sometimes, but the fact they block for 3 is enough for me. Then we look at Sizzle. Sizzle is a 0, costs another card from the First Strike decks. Your next lightning or elemental attack this turn gets +3 go again. So we have another 0 cost buff onto your lightning or elemental attacks. The good news is that that also works with Starfall. So if you play this lightning card as a Sizzle, you get to go ahead and pump up your Starfall by 3, and then because it was a lightning card, you get an additional +1 and go again. So this is a 1 for 5 go again with just the weapon alone. So if you're trying to present some damage and this is the only thing you have available to yourself, do it. It's going to be great for you. Sigil of Lightning, this is an instant card you can play. It'll make sure to create an embodiment of lightning token already. Don't feel bad if you have to use that embodiment of lightning token on a card that already has go again. It happens sometimes, But in most cases, what you can do is whenever you create the embodiment, especially if you've played this and then it pops at the beginning of your turn, therefore creating that embodiment of lightning token, you can then play things like Shrill of Skullform and have this get go again and come in for 7. So 7 go again into a barrage of lightning cards is going to be very, very good for you. And then finally, I wanted to keep another blue in here and also make it a lightning action in case I needed to play it. This is Trip the Light Fantastic. It is a 1 for 3, block 2, and then you can at instant speed discard this to prevent the next 2 damage that would be dealt to you this turn. This is in case you're running into weird Rosetta Thorn problems, but also just if you're trying to prevent a lot of damage and you don't want to go ahead and block out. Let's say you run into things like Dominate, or you run into things like Overpower, and you can't just block out a lot of that. Trip the Light Fantastic is a great way for you to kind of add an additional 2 block value onto something to really prevent those on hits. Then we move into our inventory. Pretty simplistic inventory. We have the Arcane Polarities here for our arcane damage matchups because gaining 4 life is just awesome. And then Oasis Respite, again, is good for the arcane damage, but it's also great for Guardians or Rangers or anything of the sort to prevent some of that damage that's coming in. And then if you have less life, you gain a life there too. So some life gain is always great. Then we look at Nullrune Hood, Spellfray Cloak, and Spellfray Leggings. Now, Nullrune Hood has Arcane Barrier 1. You can run this into Rune Blades, but if you're running into Wizards, you might want to play Spellfray Cloak and then also Spellfray Leggings. That way, you don't have to worry about pitching cards to Arcane Barrier. You can just prevent some of that arcane damage as best as possible, and then be able to come in with a really, really wide hand. So that is pretty much the entirety of Aurora. Let's go ahead and get into a quick game and see how she fares in the arena. Alrighty, our hero opponent is Chain, none other than Chain here. So a lot of people testing Chain over on Talishar, but we're gonna go ahead and swap over to our Nullrune Hood in case they're trying some Rune Blade shenanigans with Rune Chants. Because if they are, we want to be able to block out a little bit of that and still have a fairly okay hand. At this point here, I'm trying to figure out what I want to take out for things like Arcane Polarity, so in case they are doing that, but I'm not really finding too much that I want to truly get rid of. I feel like I'm a pretty good spot for where I want to be. But what I do is I end up taking out those Sigil of Lightnings and adding in the Arcane Polarities, so that way I can just gain 8 life at some point throughout the game, and I feel like that's going to do me a lot better than Sigil of Lightning. So my starting hand, kind of bad. I'm going second. So luckily I can filter a lot of this out, but my hand blocks, they're just a bunch of 2 blocks. So if my opponent wants to deal damage to me, they totally can, but I'm going to try my best to block it out here. So here comes a Shrill Skullform for 5. They created that Soul Shackle, so it will have go again. I'm going to block comfortably here for 4 damage and just leak 1. We're expecting something like a Rosetta Thorn later on, but they are not going to get the arcane damage. So there is the Deadwood Dirge. Create that rune chant. I'm going to go ahead and pay for that here because I'm just going to block the other 1 coming in from the Rosetta arcane damage. So I'm block 1 there, and then I'll block 2. Just take 2 on that really, really large turn, and then continue on with my thing. The cool thing about Chain is that now those Soul Shackles can be destroyed, so their game plan can last a little bit longer. But Chain still really wants to have Soul Shackles so they have a better hand, because the cards that happen to be in Chain's Banish Zone are cards that he can use. And so it's really, really important that they have those Soul Shackles, but it is nice that you can utilize that as a non-attack action for Deadwood Dirge to then go ahead and play out the Rosetta Thorn. So here's an Entwined Lightning for 4. I fused it with that Electrostatic Discharge, so it is coming in for go again. And we're looking just to kind of get as much value here as we possibly can. I think our Hit the High Notes is not going to be as effective on this turn, so we're just going to kind of go ahead and slam in a whole bunch of damage here. I'm going to not destroy my Mark of Lightning in this situation, and we are just going to go ahead and probably come in with a Starfall next, I believe. Yeah, because next, if we do Starfall, we're going to Electrostatic Discharge 2. That'll give that Crackling an additional +3. So Electrostatic Discharge will come in at instant speed. This will give my next attack with cost 1 or less +3. my next attack action. But I'm not going to play Crackling just yet because I want to maximize the amount of damage here. So I go ahead and I pitch the hit the high notes to come in with a Starfall for 2, go again, because we really just want to make sure these chains are super, super wide and force our opponent to make poor blocking decisions. So here comes Crackling. Crackling is for 7 damage because they got the +1 because I played a lightning card beforehand, and it gets the +3 from the electrostatic discharge. So this is where our opponent's going to want to block a little bit more, but they also want to keep their hand because they want to still be able to make a shackle and come in with some damage there. So they only block 3, they take 4, I go ahead and I pass it on over. Now I could have kept the hit the high notes and just put that in Arsenal. That could have been something to set me up for the next turn. But as we see, there's no real rune chant generation on my end, and therefore it would have just kind of fell to the wayside. So I think I held better in getting that 2 free damage off on Starfall. So here comes another Shrill of Skullform for a whopping 7, go again. And again, we're expecting a possible Rosetta Thorn on the end here because, you know, you have 1 floating resource after you pitch to Shrill. So that could easily be good there. I take a lot of damage there because I want to keep my hand. I'm now at lower life than my opponent, which means that my Scarfer's Scar is online. And that's really what where I want to be. So Rosetta Thorn comes in. They went ahead and played Whisper of the Oracle. That was their non-attack action. And so because of that, I went, well, you know what? This is an opportunity to play Trip the Light Fantastic at an instant speed to prevent that 2 Arcane coming in. And then I just go ahead and say nothing there. It prevents the 2. I can put an Aether Ironweave out in front and then just take 1 damage, kind of move on with my turn. And I'm not going to say that my turn is the most effective, but it is at least presenting more damage than our opponent was, because we're coming in for 4, 3, and 4 in this case. So that's a whopping, 11 damage. So it's actually equal to what our opponent threw at us. And the only difference here is that our opponent will have to block with cards from hand, whereas with arcane damage, we, you know, they could just pitch and keep cards back in their hand. So Scar for a Scar, we got the value off there by going lower than our opponent. Then we go ahead and come in with a Fry. This card blocks for 0, so we don't really want to keep it. We want to play these as quickly as possible. So that Fry is going to come in for 3 damage. Our opponent's going to say no blocks because they're trying to race us, essentially. And then we're going to go ahead and come in with the Crackling for 4. So if our opponent doesn't want to block and we don't want to block, then we're in a race here. So we're just in a race to see how quickly can we get to our opponent's crucial life totals to where it ends up being too much of a detriment to not block. And here we go. In Arcane Polarity, which works out pretty good for me knowing my opponent has Deadwood Dirge, that allows me to gain some life here if they do make any rune chants, but that's here nor there. I also have a Sizzle, which I can then play into something like a Glittering Charge. I can also play the Electrify. Unfortunately, I want to get that Electrify into Arsenal if I can, but we'll see how much of a terrifying threat our opponent's hand is here. Looks like they play the Ebb and Fold, and they end up getting a Phantom Wraith into Banish. So this is Runegate Chain, something that I've been seeing on the commoner queue for a little while here. Very curious to try it out myself here too. But Arcane Cussing's coming in. Deadwood Dirge is coming in to destroy the Cussing. 6 rune chants on the back. And this Phantom Wraith is going to get hit with a Goliath Gauntlet and then is going to be able to be played for free because of Runegate. And now in this situation, I can block out the Arcane Barrier, but I don't really want... I have an all red hand. If I had a blue, it would have been different. But the good news here is that I can take 6 rune chants and then gain 4 life with Arcane Polarity. And that's what the plan is here, is I'm going to go ahead and utilize that Arcane Polarity to get as much value as I can out of this and then come up to 8. But that Phantom Wraith is coming in for 8. So in this situation, I do still have to block with something. Now, the real question here is I could block with an Electrify, or I can block with a Flittering Charge. Flittering Charge will come in for 7 if I Sizzle and then Flittering, but Starfall will come in with, if I keep the Electrify, I can put it in my arsenal and then just wait, right? I would IP myself if I decided to do that, so I am going to block with the Electrify, just take 6 damage here, fall down to 2, and then come in with a big breakpoint for my opponent. They don't have anything to block with yet, but they could block with 2 cards and still have a pretty okay turn. It just depends on what their Soul Shackle is. So we play the Sizzle, we then go ahead and play the Flittering Charge. Now, what I could also have done in this situation, which I might do, I actually don't recall if I do this or not, because this is silly on me. What I could do here is I could give this attack action go again, and then activate my Aether Ironweave to then attack with my weapon for 2. That would be threatening a lot more damage, considering my opponent's only blocking for 5 here. Now there's the 7. So full blocked out, I can go ahead and I can ping with that Mark of Lightning, and then I can come in with 2 of the Starfall, but I don't do it. So don't be like me, make those decisions, force your opponent to block, and then you're in a good spot. Our opponent just can only Rosetta Thorn, which is great for us because we have some Deadwood Dirge in here that we can't really use. So we're just going to simply block with the Deadwood. They have 2 resources floating, but they do not have any shadow attack actions in their Banish Zone. So they don't really have anything else to see. This is just going to be a simple Soul Shackle to set up for their next turn and then block it out. But I'm also happy that I kept my Snapdragon Scalers, because keeping my Snapdragon Scalers means that I could have a pretty good turn here, in which I'm going to come in with a Lightning Surge. This Lightning Surge does not have Go Again, but I'm going to give it Go Again with Snapdragon Scalers. So therefore, I can continue my chain and provide more and more breakpoints. So we're going to go ahead and give this Go Again here. We're going to deal 1 damage there with that breakpoint, so sneak a little bit through. This Starfall is going to come in for 2. Our opponent's going to have to give us a whole card for this. And then our opponent's going to have to give us 2 cards when we come in with this Flittering Charge, therefore turning off their entire hand for their next turn. There's not really anything they can do. They will have Soul Shackles to put things into the Banish Zone, but they won't have resources to pay for anything, so it might not end up working out in their favor. So there we go, fully blocked out. Our opponent's just going to go ahead and Soul Shackle some stuff here, but the good news is if they Soul Shackle anything with Blood Debt, which they did, they will take Blood Debt damage if they could not play it out of Arsenal, or out of the Banish Zone. Because they didn't, they lost. So once again, Blood Debt showing that it can be a detriment to the Shadow heroes, but it was a very, very tight game, and I believe that I had everything set up properly. Could I have threatened a little bit more on some turns? Absolutely. But I feel like I did enough to where we put our opponent on the back foot, we got them down to 1 life, and that 1 life is crucial because every time I present 4 damage, they have to give me 2 cards, which means that if I present 3 cards with 4 damage, they cannot win. Even 2 cards with 4 damage and then my weapon, they're unable to fully block that out with a 5-card hand. And I know Chain doesn't run a whole lot of defense reactions, so wasn't anything that they were going to be able to run into anyway. But that's Aurora. I do feel like there are some things, Flittering Charges, and there's a lot of conditional Go Again inside the deck, but the conditions aren't that hard to meet. And also your weapon getting 2 Go Again, 2 is kind of difficult, right? It costs you 1 resource, and you come in for 2. That's just the concept of a Rosetta Thorn without its arcane damage. But the fact that you can pump up that damage with Sizzle and then have it come in for 5 Go Again is significantly better. And it also will help turn on future things like, destroying those Aether Ironweaves to get 2 resources to maybe come in with a Shrill of Skullform or something of the sort. But I thought it was a very, very effective deck. And if you wanted to check out this deck too, I'll have it in the description of this video for you to check out. But totally chill. If you want to, give me any kind of criticism on the deck, if you're a Runeblade player and you looked at my Aurora play and you're like, wow, you're dumb. Let me know in the comments how you would have changed this deck. And who knows, maybe I'll go ahead and I'll feature it somewhere on the channel while we continue to test into the commoner format. But if you enjoyed today's video on Aurora in the commoner format, please make sure to go ahead and smooch that like button down below. You can also subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And if you want to support the channel in a more meaningful sense, you can become a channel member. Channel members do get access to our podcast, The Common Language, a week earlier than everybody else does. You also get access to things like emotes and loyalty badges in our live streams whenever I do those. So those will also be super, super fun and great ways to interact with the community. But by no means do you have to become a channel member to enjoy the content here on the channel. You can always go ahead and just subscribe to the channel for the updates on when I post new videos for all of you. So thank you for watching today's video on Aurora in the commoner format, and I hope you continue having fun in the flesh and blood. And I'll see all of your beautiful faces in our next video.